Okay, we're live, everybody.
Okay, we'll go ahead and kick things off here. We've got the October the 27th, 2020 workshop as was scheduled. Mr. County Administrator, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is your workshop on the 2021 state and federal legislative priorities. As we do each year at this time, staff, along with our state and federal lobbying teams and the Capital Alliance Group and Squire Patton Boggs will present our proposed legislative priorities, answer any questions that you might have, and of course, welcome your direction. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Andy Johnson.
All right. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here once again, as we do each year, to present our annual legislative workshop. As Vince mentioned, as we do every year, Commissioners, we've asked our state and federal lobbying teams to join us today. You'll hear from each of them throughout the presentation. They'll be providing some updates for us on the latest developments in the Florida legislature and in Congress. So we're happy, of course, to be joined today by Jeff Sharkey from Capital Alliance Group, as well as Taylor Beal and Vicki Cram and Sarah Vilms from Squire Patton Boggs. And again, as I mentioned, you'll hear from each of them in just a few moments. And if you will bear with me for just one moment, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. I've got a couple slides for today's presentation. Can everybody see them okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Great. Well, moving, Commissioners, here's just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. I will start with an overview of our proposed funding requests for next legislative session. As you'll hear in just a moment from Jeff Sharkey, and as we've noted throughout your workshop materials, Commissioners, the state is projecting a very significant revenue shortfall from COVID-19, of course, for next year. So we're anticipating next session to be a pretty tight budget year. However, as we do every year, Commissioners, as you know, we've put together a concise and a very targeted list of funding requests for your consideration that we feel stand the best chance of success during next session. Following that, Commissioners, I will cover our proposed state and federal policy priorities for the coming year, which will include a few new issues for you for 2021. And as I mentioned, I'll hand it over to our lobbying teams throughout the presentation today to provide some more context for us on the 2021 state legislative session, as well as the 117th Congress, which starts in January. And as always, we'll plan to just hit the highlights. All of this information that we'll present today is discussed in full detail in your workshop materials, but of course, please do stop us if you have any questions along the way. And of course, we'll be sure to wrap up our presentation with plenty of time for the board to discuss and of course, to answer any questions that you may have. So starting with our list of proposed appropriations requests, Commissioners, as you know, each year the board establishes a list of county projects for funding requests that we make to the legislature. The list that you see on this slide shows the requests that we're proposing for next session. And before I go through the list, Commissioners, I'll take a moment to note that by and large, most of the grant funding that we receive each year for specific county projects comes through existing state agency grant programs. For example, you're familiar with FDOT's work program, which many of our transportation projects receive funding through that program. And as you know, we've also had several septic to sewer conversion projects supported by grants through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection in recent years. And of course, we coordinate with all of these partner agencies year-round to get our county projects aligned with these grant programs and to apply for that funding. With that said, the legislature does fund a smaller number of local projects each year directly through the line item appropriations process in the state budget. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the projects that we recommend for this list each year are the ones that we feel are most likely to be successful in that process. Specifically, in recent years, Commissioners, we've seen a trend towards disaster preparedness type projects like the first two that you'll see on this list, and I've highlighted. which involve installing backup generators at critical Leon County facilities that we can use during and after any sort of a natural disaster. We've also seen a trend toward economic and workforce development projects like the Leon Works Expo and the Junior Apprenticeship Program. And I'll also take a moment to note very quickly that we're proposing a request for our Amtrak station renovation project this year, which will be the home, of course, of our Visitor Information Center and our tourism offices. And each year, the legislature also sets aside an amount of funding for local water projects, and that aligns with the last 4 projects that you see on this slide. Moving on, commissioners, to our proposed state policy priorities for next session. I'll start here with the issues that you see on this slide, which have been among the county's priorities in recent years. Again, since you've seen each one of these before, I'll go over each one briefly, but of course, I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you may have. And on the next slide, I'll present a few new issues that are that we're proposing for 2021 that are new issues. First, commissioners on the list, advocating on behalf of the nearly 20,000 Leon County residents who are state of Florida employees is a perennial priority of the county. I will say last year, the legislature included a 3% across the board pay raise for state employees in the budget, which we reported to you in the end of session report, which was an agenda item that you received in July. Again, next year, we expect it to be a tight budget year, but with the board's approval of this issue, we'll continue, of course, to advocate for legislation that benefits our state workforce and oppose any reductions to state employee pay or benefits or anything of that nature. Next, the high impact tourist development tax issue has been among the county's priorities for the last several years. And just as a matter of background, this is a potential revenue source that could be used to support operating costs that are associated or could be associated with the convention center contemplated in FSU's Arena District plan. At this time, commissioners, Blueprint is working with FSU to formalize the development, the operational and maintenance responsibilities for the new convention center via an MOU. Next, commissioners on the list, you may recall this issue regarding discriminatory covenant language from last year. This originated from a racially restrictive, discriminatory language that was found in the original covenants of the Benton Hills subdivision dating back to 1939. A local task force convened in order to research ways to potentially get that discriminatory language permanently removed from the official records. The board, as you may recall, adopted a resolution of support for those efforts and also included it in the county's legislative priorities last year. And last year, in fact, the legislature did pass a bill that took a big step forward on this issue, which basically declared those types of provisions in a title transaction to be null and void. For covenants and restrictions language, it established a process for a homeowner to petition their HOA to have that language removed, but it didn't remove that automatically in the same way, as I mentioned a second ago, as a title transaction. We've reached out to the members of that task force from last year. We anticipate that there's going to be some follow-up legislation that they'll pursue to make that process automatic as well. And accordingly, commissioners, that's why you see we propose continuing to maintain that policy issue on the list for next year. Next, commissioners, is Tobacco 21 legislation. This is another issue that the board also adopted a resolution of support for, specifically to prohibit the sale of tobacco products and vaping products to people under 21, and to require vaping stores to secure a retail license the same way that tobacco retailers do. As we reported to you in the end of session report in July, the legislature did pass a bill that did exactly those things, but the governor vetoed that bill. We do anticipate that it will come back again next session, so we are proposing to keep it on the list. Next, on Amtrak restoration, as we've noted in your workshop materials, commissioners, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama have made some significant progress in recent years, restoring service between New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama, hopefully to start by about 2023. However, Florida has not yet joined those efforts to extend the service east from Mobile into Florida. So we recommend continuing to keep this issue on the state priority list, as well as on the federal priority list, which you'll see in just a moment. Next is the issue of concealed weapons on college and university campuses. As you know, we've seen bills filed in each of the last several legislative sessions that effectively would allow a person who may have a concealed weapons permit to carry a firearm onto a college or university facility, which is currently prohibited by law and which the county has consistently opposed in the last several years. Again, this has been an annual issue in the legislature, so we would recommend keeping this item on the list again for next session. And finally, commissioners, as we do each year, we recommend the board support Florida Association of Counties legislative program. In fact, we'll be finalizing their legislative program in early December at legislative conference. As I mentioned, the last slide showed policy issues that you've seen in the past that have been county priorities in recent years. This year, we have 4 new state policy issues for the board's consideration, which you'll see on this slide and the next one. The first one, these commissioners were proposing a policy item to support a study to evaluate and make recommendations for an independent statewide public health agency. I will pause to note that we are, of course, very fortunate to have an excellent health department director who we work very closely with every day. However, we've heard from other counties around the state over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic who share the same belief that an independent public health function in the state of Florida could be a significant benefit to local response efforts, especially in a pandemic situation like we're experiencing this year. We've also reached out to FAC, and they are supportive of the recommendation that we're presenting to you as well. And of course, more than happy to answer any questions that you may have on that item. Next, commissioners, at the October 13th meeting, the board considered a status report on the Confederate monument that's located at the state capitol complex. And as you may recall, based on the board's previous direction, we have reached out to several contacts at the state, including the governor's office, the Senate president, the Department of Management Services, which manages the capitol complex, in order to hopefully start a discussion and explore any options that may be available for potentially relocating the monument. But unfortunately, as of today, we haven't received a response yet. And at the October 13th meeting, as we discussed at that time, and as the board directed, we have sent another letter to the governor and all of the parties that I mentioned a moment ago, offering to take ownership of that monument. And in the event that those efforts aren't successful, as we reported to you on October 13th, we are also proposing this as a legislative issue for the county. And I will note that Representative Osley and several other members of the legislature have expressed support for this issue in the last few years. Last session, no bill filed on that yet, but they did indicate that they're in the same posture as we are, researching which entity in fact does control that monument. So we anticipate that that may come back this year and be an issue or a bill that is filed in the 2021 session. Last year, the new issues, commissioners, at the September 29th meeting, the board approved a resolution supporting establishing May 20th, which is Florida's Emancipation Day, as a state holiday. Of course, at that time, the board also established May 20th as a county holiday, making Leon County the first in the state to do so. And as you'll note in your workshop materials, we are proposing a similar item for our federal priorities, which you'll see and I'll come back to in just a moment. And finally, the last item that we're proposing for our state policy priorities is to support the expansion of Medicaid eligibility in Florida as provided under the Affordable Care Act. As we've noted in your materials, commissioners, each state has the option of whether to expand Medicaid. Florida is one of only 12 states that hasn't done that yet. And of course, this is especially relevant now in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, the number of people needing medical care has increased, and unfortunately, many people have fallen into lower income brackets or potentially lost their health care coverage due to unemployment. And as you recall, this is another item for which the board adopted a resolution of support. So we are, again, of course, recommending including this as part of our state priorities for 2021. So commissioners, that wraps up, I'm going to pause here for a moment. That wraps up the policy issues that we are proposing for 2021 in the Florida legislature. And with that, what I'd like to do for a moment is hand it off to Jeff Sharkey again to provide us a little bit of context and what we know as of today going into next session.
Thank you, Andy. Commissioners, thank you very much. Staff, really, again, very honored to be part of the Leon County legislative team here. These are interesting and challenging times, as you all know, and interestingly, certainly throughout the state with this election season. But I do want to just, before I start, just thank the commissioners and the staff for all you do to keep the Leon County residents safe. I think the programs that you've instituted have been very, very helpful. We get a lot of positive feedback on those, as well as the Leon Cares program, which I think is fabulous. So I'm just proud to be a part of that team. Special thanks to Andy and Nikki. We have a great relationship, good communication. He writes up a great brief on these legislative issues. So we're excited about working with him again this year. And again, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. You know, as you all know, the entire legislative process, governor's office, has been dominated by two major issues. COVID obviously continues to and impacts everything. In addition to that election, there is a small election coming up next week. I'm sure you've heard about it. That, of course, has dominated the legislature. And we are bombarded, as you well know, with the presidential election campaign commercials, social media, et cetera. So for the most part, it's been, totally dominated by those two issues. Very little discussion of other issues. However, I do want to go through some of the more recent budget estimates from EDR, some of the projections from the Senate President, current Senate President, and talk a little bit about some of the issues that we've heard from talking to legislators around the state. Taylor and I went down to meet with the Senate President, the incoming Senate President Wilt Simpson, and incoming Speaker of the House Chris Sprowls, independently last Monday. Had a very good meeting with them on key issues. Obviously, they're focused on getting through next Tuesday. They see it as a very, very interestingly tough election season for both parties. And so they're been laser focused. And of course, there's been a lot of money spent on that. But in talking about key issues that they really care about, that we think will be prominent in the session, for President designate Simpson, water issues continue to be, but he's really focused on children's issues, foster care and adoption. Speaker D. Sprowls, obviously supporting businesses. There's a huge issue emerging on tort liability related to COVID that they're very concerned about. And of course, education and reopening education. What does it mean? How do we continue? From our perspective, is the Capitol building going to be open? How is the legislature going to function? What are the protocols? We've talked to DMS about that. There's still really no schedule for reopening. We've heard a lot of different scenarios, but it'll certainly be a more controlled environment, which will make our efforts on behalf of the county, I think, as important as ever to be able to get to members in their offices. I think there'll be limited committee meeting access, et cetera. So we'll keep you posted as that moves forward. We anticipate an organizational session on November 17th. They'll all be hopefully coming back to town. That's the word for now. I think, everybody knows if the Capitol is open and things return to somewhat normal, but accessibility, it's big for Leon County economically because of the people who come to town to participate in that. Again, so a couple of the other major issues, not just from Sprowls and Simpson. Obviously, the budget constraints are huge. You've heard the governor talk about what he plans to do, but there's been some good news lately, and I'll tick through that. But tourism and economic revitalization is huge. Limiting, again, COVID-related liability litigation. Appropriations requests will be heavily scrutinized. Some of the things we really care about, Sadowski funding. Certainly, it would be a tragedy if state worker pay raises were retracted and or teacher pay raises. That happened in 2009, for those of you who were around, where they really appropriated money and then took it back. So we want to be very careful. President D. Simpson mentioned, obviously there's going to be a whole shift between recurring and non-recurring funding to kind of offset some of these budget holes. But we'll be monitoring that. A couple of other key issues, mortgage foreclosure issues, rental eviction issues, property tax, property insurance issues are all going to be in play here. But there's some good news fiscally. Andy, you may have shared with the commissioners, current Senate President Galvano has done a great job in working with EDR, the state economists, with their revenue estimates and communicating that through to his Senate members, colleagues. But just as of recently, we had a good report in August in terms of more revenue than they expected. In August, we had $177 million revenue estimate. We've now, as of a couple of days ago, we have a gain of $230 million, more than anticipated. So we're trending in the right direction. I think the summary number is $406 million more than was projected.
That's the combined gain, correct? 406 million of a combined gain. In August, we exceeded the estimate by 177.3 million. So we're on the heels of August's positive report. We're incrementally getting more and more positive news.
So, but obviously we have a $5.4 billion hole over 2 years that was projected, post COVID in early summer. But we've got, President Galvano and President D. Simpson indicated that through what they believe is their fiscal austerity, they've got a fairly strong budget reserve. They were receiving obviously the CARES money from the feds, and they don't believe there's going to be really any special session, obviously, but they're seeing positive trend signs on the budget side, which is critical. Again, a lot of the other issues, let me just jump to Governor DeSantis. I know you're all tracking them with phase 3 reopening. We've seen a lot of small businesses opening. We've seen a lot of, the gyms, barbershops, restaurants, bars, businesses. And so we're kind of almost back to full occupancy, full operations. And I can tell you, and you've seen it too, COVID numbers are rising across the state in different areas. Cases are rising, testing is rising, but it's very clear from Governor DeSantis that he is not going back. He will not turn back the reopening. I think we're just going to move and struggle through it. And there are trade-offs to that, which I know you all know. And again, I want to really reinforce our huge support for what Leon County has done, because I think you've really done a fabulous job in creating an environment that allows businesses to manage the opening, but also to keep residents safe with your mask ordinance. And as you well know, the governor can require, his executive order says, businesses can still require customers to wear masks, but as you know, no fines and fees can be collected by local governments who have mask ordinances. So those dynamics are continuing. Healthcare issues, hospitalization issues are surfacing. Senior care, ALF issues, all of those things where you're seeing spike in cases, need for hospitalization or advanced medical care are going to play out in the budget. Everybody's going to be asking for more money on the healthcare side. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, Andy, that plays into your issue with the county health department structure. We've seen, a lot of inconsistencies and different messaging around the state when we talk to our legislators. So I think it's really important that if there's a possibility of getting a better messaging, better data collection system, that's become politicized as well. I don't want to track through all of the priorities that Andy posed. We've discussed them. Some are old issues that we've addressed before, and we'll come back. We have our Seminole Knolls spear in the ground on the Leon Works. We're going to get that done. We got it done. The governor vetoed it, along with $2 billion worth of other projects. So but we feel confident that apprenticeship and career training programs will be strong this year, and we'll come back on that. Andy, I can, we've talked about the Confederate monument. We've tried to be helpful in identifying who owns that parcel, that statue, and I think we'll probably get an answer reasonably soon. So we're here to help. We work very closely with FAC and the local government interagency government relations group. So we're totally focused on assisting Leon County as we move into the 2021 session. As again, they haven't really set a date for the interim committee meetings, which we anticipate will be in January. And again, as you all know, but we are moving back in that off-season 2-year alternative where session will start the first part of March and run through May. So again, be happy to answer any questions, anything we can do to help. Obviously, we're totally committed. I didn't address the ballot initiative amendments. I know you're all probably tracking those. I mean, we're a week away, and there are some interesting polls out on what might pass. I'll just give you my general sense of those amendments, the 6 amendments that might make the 60% approval rating. But the $15 an hour minimum wage seems to be trending very strongly. Just FYI. As does the open primary, which I know has been opposed by both the Republicans and Democrats. The Save Our Homes exemption and the tax breaks for veterans, I think will be a no-brainer. And I think that those will probably do well with the massive, I'm sure you talked to Mark early, the massive voting that's taking place. There was an article this morning that indicated potentially 82% of the registered voters may vote in this election. That would be almost a record. 1992 was the record of 86%, but 82% is a huge number of people voting. So we'll see how these all play out as well as with the local elections. Andy, I'll stop talking.
Thanks, Jeff. You're great. It goes without saying, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we love working with Jeff and with Taylor. These guys are as responsive as they get and as helpful as they get. So couldn't say more great things about our working relationship with them. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll look to you for your preference. We can pause for questions if you like. We have just a couple slides on our federal issues, and we'll ask Vicki and Sarah to chime in there. But I'll look to you for your preference.
Yeah, I think there's a few people that wanted to break here. Commissioner Lindley, and I can't see from my vantage, so if you don't mind giving me a hand signal, but I saw Commissioner Lindley earlier, so if anybody else would like to speak at this point, Commissioner Proctor. Go ahead, Commissioner Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I had just a couple of questions for Jeff or Taylor. And one is on the independent statewide public health agency concept. What does that do to the financing of like our public health agency? Do communities take over salaries and all? Right now, I think we just maintain the building. Do we take over salaries? Is this something that the legislature would be happy to get rid of, which is, would in fact the legislature not be spending money on a statewide public health agency? I don't know what the odds are of that happening, but just curious how the finances would work. And then I had one other question.
Yeah, Jeff, let me take the lead on that one if I can.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, thanks to Commissioner Lindley. I'll take full blame for that idea. That was, as you know, we put an awful lot of emphasis on our planning and response to emergencies, but we put at least that much emphasis on lessons learned so that we're better prepared for the next one. And this idea, and I know that you didn't ask about the intent of this. I think that's probably pretty clear, but certainly we noticed throughout the pandemic, not that we're at the point of completely settling in on these lessons learned, but since we have a legislative process, legislative session upcoming, we thought it was appropriate to advance this one and to do so as a study. It was very clear throughout the process, just to state the obvious, that the need for an independent health office or officer to be able to provide guidance, health-related guidance to the counties would be essential. As Andy mentioned at the very beginning, our health department director has been great, but there have been many occasions whereby we at the local level have been interpreting data and extrapolating data for local purposes, and have been at the point of making decisions on healthcare related matters where they clearly could not assist us because that direction may have been counter to the direction of the state or the governor, especially in cases where I can recall the opening of youth sports. The response that we would get was, we can't tell you yes or no, but we can tell you how to do it if you choose to do it. Or schools, we can't tell you if you should go back into school or not, but we can give you guidance if you decide to go back into schools or not. Clearly not good enough. And so one of the things that we're recommending, rather than come up with these solutions, because there's some obvious solutions to that, but to get to the issue that you brought up, Commissioner Lindley, we thought it was appropriate to have a study, so that we could study all of those things, including the costs associated with them. We clearly are not requesting to take over the costs of the state health department. However, we do know that there are other models out there in other states, which we would probably benefit from some research and a study that may glean some positive recommendations for us here in Florida. But yeah, I just thank you, Jeff, for letting me get in on that. As I said, I wanted to take full blame for that one, and to also let you know that I asked Andy to advance this with FAC, and they engaged other counties, and the other counties came back and said emphatically yes, that was certainly something that they would support as well.
I appreciate that. I mean, it's probably been one of the times the state public health agency has really been on display constantly. So this is the idea of a study is great. And I had one other question for Jeff, which is, and I should know this answer, I think, but the high impact tourist development tax, is that something that we would have a local referendum on like we did for Blueprint, or is that, I didn't quite understand how that would shake out.
And I
Muting.
can jump in on that.
Yeah, and you want to jump? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
Is
that would be if the legislature were to expand eligibility in other similarly situated counties to levy that, that would be done by a supermajority vote of the board.
A super of the board. Okay.
Yes.
Not an, all right. Okay. And I love the Amtrak station. Great idea of being useful and beautiful and bringing some historic preservation to our community, and it ties in great with our hope of getting Amtrak services again. So that's a great project. I've got some good projects here. I appreciate them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Thanks.
I've got Commissioner Proctor and then Commissioner Minor. And Commissioner Dozier, your hand was up, but then went down. Okay, so I'll put you in the queue too. Okay, so Commissioner Proctor, then Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say to the county administrator, in no way do I see his need to apologize or to say that it's his fault for anything. It's an exceptional thought and recommendation that we do have an independent health review board. And I think among highly intelligent people in America, there's been great disappointment with the marginalization of the CDC, the marginalization of doctors being called idiots, the fear that has been placed and the complete muffle that's been placed on publicly controlled health departments. It has been amazing, the marginalization of health entities, to the extent that truth, reporting, and all of those things are needed to be independent because the dynamics that we have seen. Even Dr. Fauci has been been muted as useless, and his voice is not a coherent one. So I 100,000% support that initiative. Commissioners, as I've listened to Andy, I wanted to ask Jeff this question on our report. Will the governor introduce a criminalization of protest when the legislature meets in November? Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Proctor. I had that in my notes here. I didn't want to continue talking too long, but he has mentioned that. And it's interesting that also that, the issue of criminal justice reform, Black Lives Matter issues, have kind of receded a little bit into the background with the overwhelming noise from the election and COVID. But he was very outspoken about that and heated about it. So I anticipate we'll see something, if not a concept, on that, what he puts out, his legislative priorities. Obviously, I think depending on where these numbers end up in the House and the Senate, I know that senators, and Taylor can plug in on this as well, senators that we have talked to on the Democratic side, of course, are highly opposed to that and will politicize that issue extremely. And we are 2 years away from an election for governor, and it starts on November 4th. So we shall see, how that really plays out.
Okay, I think that our board should be, our county commission should have a resolution against criminalizing protests. And simply because a governor misunderstands the meaning of the First Amendment, and no governor prior to the misunderstandings of this one has sought to criminalize persons who voice their concerns and seek redress for grievances that they hold. And I would strongly hope that our commission would take a position resolution, as well as fact. The state of Florida, I understand how its health departments are under siege, and information is very much limited from the executive branch. But the executive branch should not make criminals of the voices, individual citizens of Florida. That's going in the wrong direction. And this is not an aristocracy where an executive gets to shut down and make criminals of those who want to voice their discontent to government. With respect to the Amtrak building, and given the vast activities occurring in that area, commissioners, I would think that it would be useful to study a parking lot, a stacked deck parking lot down there at Amtrak. And we have so many meaningful things occurring there now, but there really is not parking. And maybe just perchance of infrastructural needs for economic development would be, I foresee the need for a paid parking lot that the county gets paid. We maintain it 24/7, and for all the different uses in that area, I think it would be timely. And then, Jeff, please note that as I look through our notes and see either the May 20th, Juneteenth, whatever date it is, we strongly support the state's adoption of such a date as that. I'll pull up there, Mr. Chairman, and allow others to say something.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Okay, I've got Commissioner Minor followed by Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but this is a question for Andy. If you go to table 1 on page 5 on our legislative appropriations requests, we talk about how each of these has a 1-to-1 match from local sources. If it's different for every line item, we don't need to go into the details, but generally speaking, where does that funding come from locally? Should we get that appropriations request honored?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Minor, each of these projects is included either in it's already budgeted, it's in the CIP, It's in one of our, for example, our emergency management plan or BMAP. So these are programmed for funding, maybe not necessarily in the upcoming year, but in an out year. So the funding is available for it. If we were to receive funding from the legislature, we've got funding available that we can pledge toward.
Okay, great. And then on table 2, some of those are big ticket items, but are there any of those require or any of those being a match of any type?
They will, and it's different for each one of those projects, but we bring all of those issues back to you during the budget process each year, and as we execute grant agreements, we bring back that information to you item by item as we get notification of funding awards.
Okay, sounds real good. Thank you, Andy. Mr. Chairman, that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One quick question just on procedure here. I've got some general questions about state for, well, Andy, Vince, Jeff, or our county administrator, Jeff, Taylor, whomever, and some specific issues that I wanted to see if we could add to the list. Would you want to take all state at one time? Is that correct? You don't want to come back to anything in a little while, right? We'll wrap up the state discussion right now and then move to federal.
Yeah, that would be that seems to make more sense. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So this is a good report. Andy, guys, thank you very much. And I think I'll say this for both federal and state. I've had this feeling that we may need a second workshop, maybe not Mr. County Administrator, but at least a second discussion, because particularly on the federal end, things could change dramatically depending on the makeup of the Senate, House, wherever we might be in a week or a few weeks, correct? And I see Vicki nodding there. So I'll get to that more in the federal, but for Jeff, and Taylor, if there's anything on the state end that you think we should revisit after the election, I'd love to hear that as well. But I do appreciate the general update, getting marginally better on the projected shortfall. One question I had was about Leon Works program, and I've said this last year, it has been a fantastic program. Really sorry we didn't have it this year. In fact, I just had some pictures pop up on one of those Facebook memories and was enjoying looking at those of one of our events at Lively. But I also think we should look at apprenticeship funding or any other kind of economic development funding, because that's a priority of the governor and Department of Economic Opportunity. So within that space, have you identified any other opportunities for us? Are you looking at those? Just kind of what's the lay of the land at DEO and the legislature on economic development and apprenticeships particularly? I'm not sure who that's for, Mr. Chair, but
Commissioner, I can jump into that. Obviously,
or Jeff. Okay.
Yeah, just and Andy, you can obviously follow up with a more cogent and thoughtful response. Commissioner, we've obviously been working on this for a long time. It is one of our passions. Taylor has got Leon Works tattooed on his arm, so that's how invested he is. And we've been working very hard on this for the last couple of years. And was very obviously. I think that had we not experienced COVID, the governor would not have vetoed that. We've spent a lot of time talking to the chief of staff. There are some different areas in the budget that track both career training, workforce development, and apprenticeship programs. Most are in the Department of Education budget. They're either line items for colleges or K-12 schools. LEAs as they call them, and or there are some through the workforce program. Since Leon Works is a high school focused program, we have historically either gone through TCC as our partner in this to provide that kind of the vehicle through which the program is going to be administered. They've been very supportive over the years. So to your point, as budgets, as this year's budget gets reassessed and everything else, I think, Commissioner Dozier, to your point, rebuilding Florida, retraining Florida, the jobs are going to change and shift in a variety of ways that some of us can figure out, think about, but I think a lot of things that we haven't even anticipated yet. That those kinds of career training, apprenticeship programs are going to be much more valuable, particularly if they're leading towards real jobs, which I think this one does. So, to be honest, I think despite budget concerns, we will have a much higher probability of getting something like this done again and getting the government to support it next year. I don't know if that addresses your question of kind of budget categories, but our goal is to get people to support it, budget folks to support it, and then find out where to put it if we needed to put it someplace different.
Forgive, Mr. Chair, two
Go
different
ahead.
issues, Jeff, that you worked incredibly hard on Leon Works, and I think I heard you say all but tattooed. So I guess that's the next step for this session. That keep powering through with Leon Works. I think that's great, and we all know there's a challenge with just getting people to think about alternative careers and I shouldn't even say alternative, careers that don't take a 4-year degree, right? That's the power of Leon Works. I'm asking about let's build on Leon Works.
Oh.
Keep that going, not to add to your work list too much,
but
what other have we explored other grant opportunities, other programs that could help us fund a bridge from Lively and TCC to connect to the private sector employers who need these folks? I mean, there's a lot of things in statute that I kind of understand need to be adjusted for us to get back to a robust apprenticeship program. So are we looking at those types of issues? Are there any funding that we could work in partnership with our higher ed folks and Leon County schools to develop apprenticeship programs so those that come out of Leon Works have someplace to go? That's my question. Yeah.
We respond to that, Commissioner. That's a good point. We represented another client called the National Electrical Contractors Association, which has probably the largest apprenticeship program in the state. They fund a significant portion of it, probably 65% of those. They work around the state through LEAs and community and state colleges. So we spent a lot of time looking at the apprenticeship funding. Frankly, there's been a robust increase in money going to that. There's been a strong understanding, both the House and the Senate, the governor, that, to your point, those programs, really good jobs, good wages, you don't need a 4-year college degree. And so there's been a lot of support for that. If there are other programmatic vehicles that whether the Leon County School District and or TCC, and I think with President Murdaugh and Vice President Provost Madeline Kumar-Yeaga, who's very creative about this stuff, we could probably identify some additional program that might fit within those budget categories.
Okay, this was one of a few issues I wanted to talk about. So, Andy, unless you or the county administrator had anything to add, I would just say that I would welcome the opportunity for us to look at those opportunities. And that is exactly what I've been trying to drive at, is that I know there's funding available. I know there's more interest in apprenticeship. So have we sat down with Lively, with Madeline from TCC, absolutely, with others, and talked about how we could help increase those opportunities in our community? Mr. County Administrator, am I on the right track with this, or do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, sure, and absolutely, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Andy, I'll let you follow up on that. Did you have anything to add?
I do not. We can certainly we can do an exhaustive review and bring back any information to the board on programs, especially ones that have come online in the last session or 2 sessions on new funding programs, and bring that back as information to the board.
Right, and thank you for that, Andy. But as far as the discussions go, Commissioner Doge, we remain actively involved with all of our partners, and they certainly appreciate. We're one of the organizations in town who have a an active, not only the Leon Works program, but an apprentice program. And so we remain with our eyes open throughout session for opportunities to grow and expand that. And certainly our work and our conversations with our partners continues year round.
Okay.
And I will just say that, as we approach the legislative session, interim committee weeks, things will, the governor will come out with his, budget recommendations, and we may see lanes and opportunities that come to fruition as we get further down the line. This session is going to be about, surviving in a COVID economy and how we, get back on our feet again as a state, from a variety of reasons. And then depending upon what happens in Congress, there may be, huge infrastructure bills and everything may play well together. So
thank you, Taylor. I mean, I like the way you're thinking with that. And I'll just bring this to a close here. Everything we talk about in Office Economic Vitality, workforce training, recruiting businesses, this all ties back, construction, jobs, everything else. So the county has a role here with our partners. So if there are opportunities for funding, yes, Mr. County Administrator, I mean, we're right there. People recognize us as a partner, but looking for those opportunities and making sure we have that on our list of priorities is what I'm after. So, and in addition to Leon Works, not instead of, so in addition to. So I'm going to put a pause there and move on to the next. So thank you for diving into that for a minute. The Amtrak, I just had a question about that. The state side, we reference the Southern Rail, or we don't reference the Southern Rail Commission explicitly. We do in the federal part of the agenda item. And I just wondered if that should be an explicit part of our ask with Amtrak. I mean, and I'm talking about Amtrak service here, not the Amtrak station, right? That, we encourage the state to join the Southern Rail Commission. Is that a problem, or is that something we have been asking?
It is, and Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dozier,
Go ahead.
That's certainly a very appropriate clarification that we can make to that. The Southern Rail Commission was sort of an interstate rail partnership that was formed by the 3 states that are members of that. I think it was in the 60s or in the 70s. It would be, and we've discussed this with Transportation for America was one of our trips that we've made in the last few years during the NACO conference. And they have indicated very clearly that if Florida were to join the Southern Rail Commission, it would be a huge step forward. And it would lend quite a bit to the efforts, and it would express Florida's interest very clearly in expanding passenger rail and Amtrak service into Florida. So to answer your question, yeah, I think that would definitely be a good clarification.
Okay. So we'll come back to that on a question of when we get to federal, but I'm making a little list here of the things that we could add in case those need to be part of a motion. So that is great. For the state workforce, we always talk about pay. Can we also talk about protecting the health and safety of the state workforce? Mr. County Administrator, is there any problem with adding that language?
None at all.
Okay. I think it aligns really well with your very good idea. Take responsibility. I'm with Commissioner Proctor for the study of the health department. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you already teed it up. And I think this one reinforces our perspective. So, okay. So that leaves a good set of questions I have on agency funding. And this is kind of why I asked Mr. Chair if we were going to dive into state issues completely now and wrap this up. Over the last few years, we have improved our coordination among our various agencies, city, county, Blueprint, CRTPA. Really appreciate the work, Mr. County Administrator, from your staff, from our other agencies in coordinating. And this flows back to both federal and state requests. One of the things I have learned, and we've all talked about it, CRTPA and others, is that not all agencies are are equal, I should say, in their process, right? There's maybe a different process for water projects, septic to sewer, than there might be for transportation. So I gotta say, when I hit table 2, and this is on our page 5, I was a little startled to see some of the projects here. And I had a conversation with our executive director from CRTPA. So Mr. Chair, I've got to, this is our opportunity to talk through this. And I know you understand, we all do, that there is a difference with the FDOT's 5-year work plan versus some of the other departments. So that's really what I'm focused on. And the first one on the list, Capital Circle Southwest, that is 100% funded in the 5-year FDOT work plan. My understanding is there's no need for that project to be listed among our legislative priorities. Number 2 is Woodville Highway. We already have right-of-way in progress and funded in our 5-year work plan. That signals FDOT's commitment to that project. So based on what we've learned at CRTPA, so long as we stay the course, we don't need to have that as a legislative request, because it's going to be funded through the 5-year work plan. I'd like to stop there. I've got a couple other questions on this list, but Ms. County Administrator, Andy, or Jeff, could you all speak to this and just talk to me about how this list came together and what you think about at least those first 2 examples?
Sure, I think. And Andy, you want to jump in first? I'll follow up with you if you'd like.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dozier. Table 2 is not necessarily legislative requests, like line item appropriation requests, but more of a list of projects that we have either in progress, in different phases, programmed in the budget and the CIP. To your point, you're absolutely correct that some of those projects are programmed for complete funding, but may not necessarily have grant agreements currently in place. And another important point to make would be that for example, for a project that is programmed for funding in out years of a work program, especially given the financial condition that the state is looking at going into next session, if transportation trust fund revenues are down, for example, if we don't have a grant agreement in place yet for a particular phase of a project, while it may be programmed, until we have a grant agreement in place, we don't have a 100% guarantee of funding for a particular phase of a particular project. But again, I'll just go back to what I mentioned a moment ago, that the table 1 on the previous page is the list of county projects for which we would be seeking a specific line item appropriation in the state budget. But table 2 is intended to indicate all of the projects that we have in process that we would be seeking the board's direction to continue seeking state grants for through the existing state agency grant programs and federal grants as well.
So just to follow up on that, I'm not sure and this may help me. I haven't described funding for Capital Circle Southwest as grant funding. It is funding allocation from the state through their 5-year work plan. We go through the MPO process in order to qualify for that. So that may be part of how I'm looking at this a little different, that I'm thinking about a grant from DEP for septic to sewer as a true grant, but we don't apply for transportation dollars in the same way. Part of the reason why I'm asking these questions and this is for my colleagues on the board and, and staff as well, that it is my understanding that we need to be really clear when we make these asks, so that the FDOT secretary, should one of these projects advance through the legislature, get approved, it may, maybe we get approved for money for the 5th project on the 5-year work plan. That may disrupt FDOT's process. They're now being told from the legislature and the governor that they have to fund something when they had a different ranking from CRTPA. So we have to make sure these 2 things are aligned to keep our relationship really solid with FDOT, right? So could we include those projects, and these are just county projects. There's a lot more on CRTPA list. So these are just the county projects. could we simply package those a little different and say we support CRTPA's 5-year work plan? And that way we're not making a request for something that is already in that work plan, and particularly something that is already scheduled to be funded. And this, I guess, is my other problem with this is, sure, we may not have a grant agreement in place. Again, it's an appropriation. It's not necessarily a grant. Mr. County Administrator, am I on the right track with this?
No, yes, as a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, the way you're describing it is really the way we do it as a practical matter, sort of one level deeper from this, in terms of saying that, the Board of County Commissioners is supportive and the county is supportive of the CRTPA and the FDOT 5-year work program in that order. And that's the way, again, we show it reflected. We sort of identify it here really for the purposes so that the commissioners, you commissioners, can see specifically the projects that are here. But again, the way you describe it is the way that we communicate with FDOT in terms of the rank order of the projects. And we want to make sure that obviously we continue to identify these projects specifically so that they don't come off a list, because these, of course, we all know these 5-year programs are not static. So we continue to make sure that we identify them by name and rank order. But so that level, Commissioner, of consistency with the CRTPA does and is taking place. This, again, is more for the board for these purposes so that you can actually see the actual projects submitted here. But I think that's good feedback, and it may provide some good guidance for us just moving forward in how we even present these to you.
I think it would be really helpful in the future to segment these and to say that, there are grants that we are pursuing, legislative or through the executive branch, through executive branch agencies, and those that we support as part of the 5-year work plan. Because we need to know that when we get back to CRTPA, that they're in the right posture. I'm not tracking all these numbers. That's why I called Greg. I didn't have them all in my mind. But this is a legislative agenda item, so I read it completely different, and I don't want anyone else to read it different. I should have asked you, Jeff, if you had, from your perspective, working with the legislature, am I on the right track with this? They'd rather those be attached to the 5-year work plan, right?
Yes, correct. Hit the wrong button. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
It has to, with those numbers, the size of the projects, it has to move through. Unless you want to build a road from Punta Gorda to Lakeland.
Just stay tuned. I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll leave that one. I've got it on my list here of board direction, but I would love to hear anybody else if y'all have comments on that. But this one really stood out to me, and it is something that we've worked really hard to get this coordination piece right. And I think we need to be clear about where we are with FDOT. The only other one, and this I did not have a question about necessarily, but in my conversation with Greg Slay at CRTPA, he was looking at the transportation part of this list, and he made a comment that when a project is vetoed, like Orchard Pond, FDOT and CRTPA are not allowed to spend any money, even if they had it, on that project for 1 year. And because it's not likely that we're going to get funding for Orchard Pond this year, I just wondered if it might be a good opportunity to pull it off the list, take a little breather so, we don't run the risk of it getting vetoed again, give direction to explore other options, and then put it back on the list in 22. I don't know if that matters or not, but it stood out to me that a veto prevents us from looking for other funding opportunities for the next year through FDOT and CRTPA. Mr. County Administrator, or anyone else, any thoughts on that?
Andy, do you have any observations on that?
I do, yeah, I can chime in on that. Orchard Pond is, as you may recall, commissioners, we've had that on our legislative list or table one in the context of this discussion for the last several years. We have, in many of those years, been successful in getting that project included as a line item appropriation in the state budget. It has been vetoed every time. What you may notice in your workshop materials, commissioners, is for that reason specifically, we've moved it out of our table one and we've moved it into our table two, which is again seeking your direction to pursue grant funding for that. But to the specifics of that project, if it had been contemplated in previous years by the legislature to go through DOT's budget, I don't think that precludes us from, again, it's a trail project as opposed to a road or a bridge. It wouldn't preclude us from seeking a grant through FDEP, for example, for a park and recreation type grant, as opposed to going through DOT or CIP.
I'm going to bring this in. Thank you for that. I'm fine with it. You've answered the question. And yes, if this is just for grant funding and other things, I am happy. It was just kind of mixed up with other, with legislative requests we've had in the past and part of the item. So I wanted some clarity there. Either way, I think Capital Circle Southwest should probably come off because construction is funded. So I don't know where we land on that we don't have the money in hand yet or not, but I'm going to leave that alone and perhaps we can talk about it again at a later date. So with that, it brings me to the final item for state, and that is the MCORS process and the Suncoast corridor, the task force. We had our last meeting last Tuesday, and if y'all think we have had long meetings, it was nearly a 13-hour online virtual meeting. When we ended earlier than Southwest, but yeah, 13 hours online. The report will be given to the governor on November 15th. So the task force is still, we're under sunshine until then, but we've had our last meeting. And we did get an amendment included in the report that was approved to submit to the governor by the full task force that asks the legislature to consider amending statute to eliminate or change the construction schedule. This gets to the FDOT 5-year work plan. We don't want to, it may be too aggressive construction schedule, particularly in light of the budget shortfall that we're seeing. So with this, I have two questions. One is, particularly for you, Jeff, and Taylor, if you're seeing any discussion right now about what I could call a glitch bill or, a change, but they haven't received the task force reports yet. So I'm guessing you haven't seen that. And secondly, if we could add a line into our legislative request to support the task force recommendation that we consider changing the legislation, or bring that back once we see a bill and we can support that. I would rather get it done today. So Jeff, I guess that's up for you first.
Commissioner, good overview for sure. And you obviously know all the details there and you understand the controversy and the political pressure points on that. We haven't heard, Taylor, you can chime in here, but I have not heard anything regarding changing the funding stream, which is included in the budget in a recurring fashion, nor the construction schedule. I know, I've read the articles that you have, but you've been probably much more involved than we have in terms of, certainly significant controversy. Routes haven't been selected necessarily, but and the DOT is trying to balance all this. I'm sure you can hear that when they're trying to put these workshops on. This is a little unusual for their typical schedule for building major thoroughfares. But I'm sure it'll be a part of the conversation when the legislature reconvenes. As you know, and Taylor can echo, Senate President Galvano was his top priority. He is phasing out. So we'll see really what level of support there is for, the funding, the routes, and the timeline. And I think this report, this task force report will be helpful in educating people, I think, for sure.
Okay, so thank you, Jeff. I will just say at least 2, if not all 3 of the reports from the task force will ask the legislature to change the construction schedule. So I would like to suggest that we support the task force recommendation. And if we need that information to be brought back to the board to make that decision, I'd suggest an agenda item for the December meeting, because by that point, I think we will certainly have the final reports, but we may even see some action in the legislature. Ms. County Administrator, is that the right posture for that one?
I would think so, yes.
Okay. Could I go ahead and make a motion, Mr. Chair, for that piece of it? That way we just ask for an agenda item to come back and we can move on with the rest?
Sure, that'll work.
Okay. So I'll move to get an agenda item for December to look at the MCOR's final reports from the task force and the request asking the legislature to consider changing the statute so that we can make a decision as to whether or not to support the recommendation from the task force.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that. Mr. Chairman would like to speak to it.
All right, Commissioner Dozier, you yield the floor to Commissioner Proctor then?
Yes, sir. That was my last
Okay.
item on my list. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no doubt that we are meeting probably about 7 days prematurely to set forth a legislative agenda. I had wanted, Mr. Chairman, for you to reschedule this until after November the 3rd, or else we have a blue plan and a red plan, especially federally. I think that Commissioner Dozier's request is timely because, in particular, as we look at the November 4th date and beyond November 4th, it would tell us how more concretely to set an agenda. And I would like to see whatever we do federally today, that there are soft programs which, if the election results come out one way, it's my total anticipation that everything that we're looking at federally ought to be modified, and in particular in the area of human services. And from the projections of what I am hearing the Vice President say that his administration will be about, I think that we ought to align our ask with what he has signaled. And therefore, I am supporting Commissioner Dozier's motion and think we all should, because we need to take another look in December to find out what the contours, the political contours of our nation really are. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. I don't see anybody else teed up to speak on this. All in favor of the motion as presented by Commissioner Dozier, seconded by Commissioner Proctor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? I think the motion carries unanimously. Okay, back to Andy. Do we need to dispose of everything else on the state side, or is there a motion we need, or just keep going?
Mr. Chair, that's what I was going to ask. I had a couple of things on that list that Andy said we could follow up on. I don't know if they need to be direction right now, but I'd like to chime in on a motion if we're ready for state, or we can do that after federal.
Let's finish with state, and then we'll move over to the federal side. Andy, what else do we need to cover on the state side?
We've got it wrapped up on the state side, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we need a motion to confirm that?
Not at this time, I don't think. At the end of the presentation, we've got a slide that shows basically the board options that are listed in your workshop materials, which are accept or approve the state and federal legislative priorities and to provide any other direction the board may wish to provide.
Okay. Well, why don't we go get yeah. I heard somebody. Go ahead.
That was Proctor. I failed, Mr. Chairman, to say, but it's a scratch record. For those of you too young to know what a scratch record is, it goes around and say the same thing round and round over and over. I continue to believe that we should unapologetically pursue the idea of a payment in lieu of. And I know that we're very self-inhibited because we think that because we receive state jobs and blah, 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 the state, but we ought to be receiving as a state capital funding for our county coffers to offset the contributions that we simply do not receive because the state occupies so much of our taxable lands. I have said this over and over, it's a scratch record. The commission may not support that, but I remember the number of years that Congressman Al Lawson asked for a FAMU law school, and consecutively it didn't go nowhere. And sometimes I think that our persistence, at some point, we will have leadership that understands the value of what Leon County incurs to stage the state capital, and it extends beyond the jobs, which people do a very good job of serving our state government. And not only that, but they work almost without expectation of a raise and marginal wages as well. So I think that we ought to put forward a ask for payment in lieu of monies that we don't get from the state that's deserving. And I hope that this commission could embrace that. And I offer it as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Okay, I would suggest, Andy, you want to move us over to the federal side of the House?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and I've just got a couple more slides. I'm going to go ahead and bring my presentation back up, but the federal list is quite a bit shorter. And then I will hand it over to Vicki and Sarah, of course, to give us an update on federal legislation. Moving right along, commissioners, as you'll see on the screen here, we're proposing to support additional and flexible federal relief for counties to support our continued COVID-19 response. This is, as you'll note, also a top priority for NACO, of course, and you'll see that listed in your workshop materials. And we've also included a letter that NACO has written to congressional leadership that outlines several specific COVID-19 related priorities for counties in any subsequent legislation beyond the CARES Act. And I won't steal Vicki and Sarah's thunder because I know they have an update in just a moment on the latest negotiations in Congress and where that discussion stands as of today. But the priorities that are articulated by NACO for COVID relief include additional resources for the public health response, continued assistance for individuals and businesses, strategies to support the broader economic recovery, and that includes additional support for state and local governments, specifically to address the significant revenue impacts from the pandemic. So again, it's a NACO issue, and we've got a catch-all on the next slide and in your workshop materials, just as we do on the state side to support NACO's legislative program, but we wanted to elevate it particularly for your awareness and to recommend that it be one of our specific legislative priorities as well. Next, as you'll see on the screen, we talked earlier about the state policy priority regarding May 20th, Florida's Emancipation Day. And as I mentioned, the board adopted a resolution to that effect, which also supports establishing a federal holiday to commemorate the abolishment of slavery nationwide. Of course, this is commonly celebrated on June 19th or Juneteenth, and there's legislation that has already been filed in Congress during the current session to establish that date as a federal holiday. With that said, I will pause for a moment and note that we have received some citizen feedback in support of a different date for the federal holiday, which is the date that Congress ratified the 13th Amendment, which was December 6th, and that formally abolished slavery throughout the United States. But as you'll see on the screen in your workshop materials, Juneteenth is listed here because it is in support of legislation that's already been filed. Again, there are bills in the U.S. House and Senate, but of course, we would support legislation for either the Juneteenth date or the December 6th date based on previous direction that we've received from the board on that issue. And finally, commissioners, again, we've talked about Amtrak earlier. On the federal side, we're recommending that the county continue to support the federal grant programs, which are CRISI and REG, as you see here, which are intended to provide both capital and operating support for the restoration of passenger rail service. Next to last, we're proposing to continue, this is also an issue that's been on the county's federal list for the past few years, supporting the city's application for a foreign trade zone at the Tallahassee International Airport. And finally, we are recommending, as I mentioned, that the county continue to support NACO's legislative program as well. And with that, I promised you the federal side would be brief, and I am happy to hand it back over to Vicki Cram and Sarah Vilms. And before I do that, of course, I can't fail to mention the same thing that I mentioned when we talked about Jeff and his team earlier, but we absolutely love working with Vicki and Sarah. They are equally as fantastic, even if not even more so. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Wow, Andy, you are too kind. And now I'm going to have to take this up with Jeff. Thank you for having us. It's nice to see you all. We really miss the opportunity to visit with you in person, which we usually do annually, as you probably know. Vicki and I have to say thank you to Andy and Nikki for their work all year long. I mean, they do a yeoman's job. We love working with them. It's a great working relationship. And, you know, we can't thank you enough for such a wonderful, wonderful team. I'm here today with my colleague, Vicki Cram, who is the co-chair of our local government's public policy practice group. And we're going to discuss 3 topics today. First, we're going to provide a quick overview of the status of the COVID relief negotiations between Congress and the White House and what's likely to happen there. Second, we're going to provide an overview of the lame duck session. That's the session that occurs after the election, but before the termination of the 116th Congress, which will end on January 3rd this year. And then third, we're going to discuss what's likely to come in the 117th Congress beginning on January 4th. So I'll start on the first item with the COVID relief negotiations. So that's the question on everybody's mind, right? Where is Congress and the White House on a COVID relief package? So as you may know, since the passage of the CARES Act in March, Speaker Pelosi of the U.S. House of Representatives and the Department of Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, on behalf of the White House, have largely been the chief negotiators on any additional relief. In discussion has been several areas, primarily unemployment insurance, which is the added federal supplement that expired in mid-September. Also notably, by this year's end, nearly all of the federal unemployment supports will expire. So unless Congress extends those programs, millions of jobless Americans could be cut off, which no one wants. Second, they're discussing additional paycheck protection program for funding businesses. Third, they're discussing additional relief for hospitals, national testing, and childcare. Those have been the main areas that have been discussed. Senate Majority Leader McConnell has said he'll refuse to consider any package that doesn't contain liability protection for businesses around COVID. And Speaker Pelosi has countered with seeking additional relief for state and local governments, which Vicki is going to speak on in more detail. While Speaker Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin had come close to an agreement or closer to an agreement, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had advised the White House not to come to an agreement prior to the election. So where we are today, while the talks continue and they have not yet reached an agreement, we do not expect one prior to the election at this point. The majority leader has said that if no package is released, he will bring the Senate back a week after the election to try to negotiate a relief package. I'm going to turn it over to Vicki right now so she can speak on the specifics of what's being considered in the package for state and local funding.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to see all your faces, and we're very sorry we can't be there in person. As you're all very well aware, the last of the 4 coronavirus response bills that passed Congress in the spring, the CARES Act back in March, included funding for state and local governments to address the coronavirus and then the resulting economic downturn. the CARES Act funded the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which went to all states and to jurisdictions of over 500,000 in population, which meant it only funded about 38 states and counties nationwide. And this required counties and cities of under 500,000 to seek funds elsewhere, either from their state or if it's a small city from their county. And, you know, as you did, and the state provided funding for Leon County. It also required local governments to obligate their funds by December 31st, 2020. Further, the rules for using these funds needed to be updated periodically as the legislative language was so vague. They had to keep clarifying what the Treasury Department had to keep clarifying what were the eligible uses. And further, it was required that the funds could not be used for lost revenues. After the CARES Act passed and there was an outcry from smaller jurisdictions, medium-sized and smaller jurisdictions, the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, and the Conference of Mayors worked with Congress to create a more equitable formula that would reach smaller jurisdictions. That formula was contained in the House HEROES Act, which was passed back in May, and then a smaller version of the HEROES Act that was passed a couple of weeks ago. We call that HEROES Point 2, but neither of these bills were taken up in the Senate. So in HEROES Point 2, the latest version of the stimulus bill that passed the House but did not get taken up by the Senate, there was $438 billion for state and local governments, dedicated for 1 year of funding. There was $238 billion that was dedicated to states based on unemployment numbers. And local governments would get a total of $179 billion, equally divided between counties and municipalities. And counties would receive then $89 billion based on population. Cities would receive $89 billion based on a modified community development block grant formula. There's another bill, which was a bipartisan bill, but it originated with Republican senators in the Senate. It's called the SMART Act. And that also had a different formula that would provide 2 years of funding, totaling $500 billion. And the formula is divided into 3 tranches of funding: population, infection rate, lost revenues. Both of these different approaches address lost revenues, and you're allowed to use the new funds that would be created for lost revenues, and we'll go back to the CARES Act and correct the CARES Act to allow those funds to still be used for lost revenues. If there is additional funding in the next stimulus, and this has been one of the sticking points for the stimulus, is providing additional funds to state and local governments. It is likely that the HEROES Act formula, the one that goes to cities by population, is the most likely to be in the bill, because that is the one that was created by the National Association of County and other local governments. Another issue arising out of the CARES Act is the December 31st deadline for obligation of coronavirus relief funds, which has been difficult for a number of localities to meet for a variety of different reasons. All the bills that have been out there that are positing local government funding for the next stimulus, all of them extend that deadline for a year. But absent a stimulus bill, that deadline is still looming at the end of this year. And then I think the last thing was the lost revenues, to just ensure that every piece of legislation could be used for lost revenues. So that's where we are with the different proposals that are out there. We need to have a stimulus bill come together to be able to finalize this legislative language. We've been working with our delegation on this as well. And I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Thanks, Vicki. So on the outlook for the lame duck session, again, that's the session that will start immediately after the elections and will run through January 3rd. There are 4 likely items that we believe Congress is going to need to take up. First is the possible COVID relief package. Depending on Majority Leader McConnell keeping his promise for the Senate to consider this and the outcome of the elections, that will be a primary issue on the Senate's plate when they return. The second, which is equally as important, is the FY21 appropriations completion. As you may know, where we are now is not where we would normally want to be. Congress, what happened was the House has passed 10 of its 12 bills this year. The Senate did not pass any, even out of committee. So the federal government is operating under a continuing resolution that expires on December 11th. That continuing resolution, which we also call a CR, prevents the government from shutting down. Now, recently, there was a deal struck in the Senate between Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to have the Senate appropriations bills completed by December 18. So that deal just means that the Senate would have to do the work that otherwise would have been done this year. In the meantime, Speaker Pelosi has said she is preparing an omnibus appropriations package for consideration also on December 18. So you can see there's going to be a lot of convergence here. Other items that are important, as you probably know, the 12 bills fund every part of the federal government. Many of these funding pieces are important to the county: CDBG homes, PILT, and other areas that we get, that the county gets a significant share of, transportation, et cetera. The other inclusions in the omnibus that are important to the county include, and they're not normally included in the omnibus, but they are this year. So the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP, that rode on the CR that expires on December 11th. In that CR, Congress extended the National Flood Insurance Program for 1 year. So that has already been done, but it will expire in September. So that will need to be addressed next year. Also, under transportation, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, which is also known as the FAST Act, that similarly rode on the CR that will expire in December 11th, and also got a full year extension until September of next year. So what that did was it fully reauthorized the Surface Transportation Act, but that was a simple reauthorization of existing programs. So they didn't really make any changes to upgrade this or to make changes to reflect current situations. So we understand they can do more. They may take up pieces of that in the infrastructure bill next year in the beginning of the 117th. But what is included in that so far is that was passed already. So you have your 1 year, is $3.2 billion for transit and $10.4 billion for highways. The other item that is of interest to the county that rode also on that CR that expires in December 11th was a package of programs within Medicare and Medicaid that will also need to be extended. So those will need to be included in this next agreement that we believe is going to be converging around December 18. So those are the two items that we think we know Congress has to deal with in the lame duck. The third item that has been discussed is a tax extenders bill. There is, for discussion and passage during the lame duck, there is bipartisan support for this. So there is a 2020 cohort of expirations that include almost 36 provisions, including tax breaks such as the work opportunity tax credit, the new market tax credit. There's an opportunity for renewable energy for wind and solar. That is something to be considered in a potential extenders bill. This bill, all of the three bills that I've discussed so far could potentially be combined together in sort of one, what Congress likes to call a grand bargain. So we've heard that pieces of the tax extenders bill are already being considered for the COVID relief legislation. Speaker Pelosi said she's not opposed to COVID relief riding on an omnibus. So there's a lot of moving parts here. The fourth and last piece that is probably viable for the lame duck is a comprehensive energy bill that Chairman Murkowski of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee has been working on for about 6 years now. She is term limited at the end of this Congress. So she has ultimate pressure, and she's put this pressure on herself, but I understand why, to move this bill. So she'll be seeking to move this bill before January 3rd. Those are basically the four items that we see lame duck primarily being considered during lame duck. I am going to turn it back over to Vicki so she can discuss the outlook for next year. That's the 117th Congress that will begin on January 4th.
So the outlook of next year very much depends on what happens on November 3rd. And we may not even know what the results are on the evening of November 3rd. There are key swing states that only start counting their ballots on that date. So there may be a lot of murkiness about the results. There are a couple of key dates. The Electoral College meets on December 14th. The new Congress, as Sarah alluded to, is sworn in on the 3rd of January. And then they are supposed to certify the presidential election results by the 6th of January. The Senate has a lot of close races that were not expected to be close, but seem to be tightening a little bit right now. So there is a potential that the Senate could flip to a democratically controlled Senate, or it could be so close, 50-50, that the vice president would be brought in to break ties in votes for the Senate. The House is expected to pick up a few more Democratic seats. They're thinking about 10. But until we know the results of the election, and I was chuckling when Commissioner Dozier and Commissioner Proctor were talking about, how do we figure out what the federal agenda is going to be? It's a little hard to know until we know the results, outside of what we've already put together in Andy's legislative agenda. But we're pretty sure there will be an infrastructure bill at some point early in the year. These COVID stimulus bills are the response to the pandemic, but there needs to be a recovery bill for jobs and the economy. So we think that the infrastructure bill, which will include a reauthorization of the FAST Act, which Sarah was just talking about, the surface transportation bill, is likely to be taken up pretty early next year. And former Vice President Biden has said that he will take it up if he is elected president as early as February. So that may be something that we can count on happening. It's likely to have, if there's a democratically controlled House and a Democratic president, it's likely to have a pretty green overlay to it, a lot of sort of green infrastructure components to it. And that was something actually that the House passed this year as sort of a messaging bill. They knew it wasn't going to go to the Senate, but they passed similar legislation to a very green infrastructure bill. And if President Trump wins re-election, this has been on his agenda for 4 years, so it's likely to still be on his agenda. He keeps talking about it early in the new year. We, Squire Patton Boggs, will be providing Andy, and he can share it with you, a post-election analysis, trying to sort of address what will be coming up in the new Congress once we know what the results are of the election, that will discuss the federal budget and infrastructure, energy, foreign affairs, a variety of different issue areas. So with that, I will conclude and turn it over to questions and turn it back to Andy.
Thank you, Vicki, Sarah. That's a fantastic update. I appreciate it very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, your preference, happy to pause for any questions if you like.
Let's see, commissioners. I can only see half of you. So anybody out there have questions? Okay, Commissioner Proctor, I see waving your hand, and then Commissioner Dozier.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I want to salute Andy being our liaison from the county. I want to salute Jeff Sharkey and Taylor and Sarah and Vicki, who've been rocking and rolling with us for a lengthy period now. I believe that it's very important that we keep boots on the ground in Washington. And I want to salute Patton Boggs' team and Sarah, Vicki, and others who we work with. They always know our agenda. They always know our wish list, and they are always cordial and tight and right. And I respect that. And I just want to salute them as a part of our record here for always being responsive, and they are highly professional. I wanted to say that, Ms. Chair, and to Sharkey and Taylor, you guys likewise give me great confidence as you navigate our issues for the citizens. And Vicki, I want you to be reminded that if the guard changes next week, and Vicki, Sarah, I need you to know that I'm hosting a victory breakfast on Wednesday morning, I hope. And but we are Blue County, and to the extent that when you come up in the Panhandle and find just a fragment of blue, that's somewhat novel. But our county is among a very few that are mostly blue, and I'm hopeful that at my victory party, it's not a victory party, it's a victory breakfast on Wednesday morning, that you guys might stop in and get some victory biscuits, some victory eggs and grits, and victory sausage on Wednesday morning. So I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it would be wise to retain the support of Sharkey and retain the support of Patton Boggs to continue their outstanding work and boots on the ground in these turbulent times. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. I've got Commissioner Dozier, followed by Commissioner Minor. Now, I have a question for Commissioner Proctor, though. There's victory sausage, victory pancakes, victory eggs. Was there victory orange juice, too, Commissioner Proctor? I just want to be sure there's full slate of victory stuff.
Well, I know Vince Long is on the line, and sometimes people have a different victory juice in their trunks of their car. And everybody don't celebrate with the same orange juice. Well, it may not be orange juice alone, but I will furnish the orange juice, and others may want something, to augment that victory juice. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Dozier, followed by Commissioner Minor.
Got to get through the important stuff there, Mr. Chair. No problem. Thank you, Vicki and Sarah. It's good to see you virtually, although we miss seeing you in person as well. And if things are as they typically are in Florida, I assume your world has gotten even more crazy in the last year, which is just extraordinary to say. And really been thinking about y'all a lot, and everyone who's working on these issues and trying to follow all the ebbs and flows in federal funding and what happens next. So you kind of both got to, and particularly you got to my, the first question was, we should probably review some of these issues post-election, particularly with the Senate. I could see having a whole host of different questions or priorities, even in your report that you included here, Andy's report, but also the one from you all. I could see some of these issues breaking in a different direction depending on where we are in a couple weeks. So I'm going to save some questions because I don't even know what I would ask or how you would answer it. But I have kind of a few things that I gleaned from your report and from ours that I just wanted to ask you about quickly. One is you've got a good section on on housing issues, and I would just say for our purposes, we are still, and Vicki, I like the way you said, or sorry, Sarah, you might have said it. I was losing track in my notes here. We are going to need a recovery bill. I mean, we've been in emergency relief territory, right? But we haven't gotten to that bill that says we need to get people back to work, and infrastructure can be a big part of that. That goes to my questions about apprenticeship programs on the state end, and hoping there's some more attention there. And Jeff, you really spoke to that, so I appreciate it. But I think with housing, we're seeing kind of, issues come up about evictions and some really challenging times that are happening right now and about to come for a lot of folks. But we also see a lot of changes, and you spoke to this in Department of Housing and Urban, I'm losing my acronyms, sorry, but in HUD rules for affordable housing. this is one of those areas that I really want to ask questions about, but I don't know which direction we break until after the election. So I will just say this for our purposes, for my colleagues, this is one area I think we really need to come back to, because if HUD continues to change some rules, we may want to really look at that and see what our opportunities are and how that's impacting us. But things could go in a different direction if the Senate changes hands or the White House. And you're both nodding, so it sounds like I'm on the right track with that.
You are on the right track. And I think particularly in the House this year, there's been a real recognition that housing is infrastructure. Infrastructure is not the traditional roads and highways and ports and bridges. Infrastructure is much broader. It's broadband, it's housing, it's energy. And so I think, depending on the outcome of the election, there may be, apart from just the relief to give people with their rent assistance and their mortgages, there will be potentially interest in a much larger, more expansive view of housing.
I'm glad I asked the question, because that actually tees up the next issue on my list. And I love that framing, that housing is infrastructure. It takes a lot more than just funding for an affordable unit. Yeah, and part of that is broadband, right? Going beyond just the small cell and that debate, which is in NACO's priorities, but also in your report. Looking, I'm teeing this up, and Mr. County Administrator, I'm not sure when that agenda item's coming back, but if we could look at these issues, not just what I teed up an agenda item of kind of looking at what the status of broadband is within Leon County, particularly in our rural areas. And I think if we could draw in information from both our federal and state lobbyists, it might help, just the rules and tracking that. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to that, but I just appreciate the information that was in the report.
Got it.
Broadband has been in also the COVID relief priorities of Speaker Pelosi. Whether that makes it into the COVID relief in the immediate term is still unknown, but that is absolutely being considered, as Vicki said, in the infrastructure bill in the 117th Congress. But if things break our way on the COVID bill, you may even see it earlier in there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That helps a lot. So I'm glad to know it's in both of those. So this is the point where I'm going to ask, this may be for the two of you, and it may be a combination with our county administrator and Andy. Well, I know we work closely with NACO, as you say in the item, we always have, and the list of priorities that they've got in their report, I agree, and I think we as a board would probably agree with most all of them. There are times when I've attended NACO conferences where they align behind something that it might be different than where our board is or where Leon County is. So I want to make sure that we're looking at that difference as we move forward, and certainly working with Pat and Boggs, with you both, on any of those issues where we may take a slightly different perspective than NACO. But if we wanted to highlight an issue that's, say, in your report from Pat and Boggs, as something we are interested in or we support, this is a very different scenario than what we do with the state, right? That we support Medicare or something like that. We don't necessarily say that in our federal legislative priorities. So if I'm making sense with that, I wanted to kind of ask that question. And a couple of examples would be, you said in your report it's the majority leader, but I think it's minority leader, Steny Hoyer, who has introduced a bill to decriminalize or declassify cannabis. And it also comes with, I'm not going to pronounce this word correctly, expungement, clearing the records. And that is, for criminal justice, that is a really big issue, and it's something that we've taken up. I don't know where that bill goes in the future, but it seems like there's a lot of bipartisan support, and I wonder if that's something that where that would fall in our discussion. How do we signal our support for that? Or is that simply communicating with our local delegation? I'm going to toss that out to you all, Ms. County Administrator, or Sarah Vicky, for any thoughts on how we address an issue like that.
It would generally align with our efforts to support the NACO platform in general, but this is always a good time, Commissioners, to give us those types of indications on issues that the board might be particularly interested in, so we could even more actively seek out opportunities that might avail themselves along the way. I would just say that as a general statement.
Okay. I did not see this bill in the NACO list. I didn't see the empowerment zones or potential changes to opportunity zones. That's kind of where I'm going with this. So where would, if the full board was interested in these issues, and if you didn't look at the empowerment zone section, that's really interesting, and we need to do something other than opportunity zones from my perspective. So that was one of the first ones I added to the list that I would love to see us have some indication of support for those types of bills working through the process. Does that matter from a county? I'll turn that over to Sarah and Vicki. Signaling that kind of support and having it on our legislative list, even if NACO doesn't, is that of value, or is it just lost in the shuffle?
Well, I'll take it first, and then I can turn over to Vicki. It is of value if you support something in Congress, if there is a letter from the Board of Commissioners reinforcing that support. Whether you have that on your internal documents that they may or may not see is lesser of importance, but the fact that you are writing and communicating and that we are bringing those letters to Congress and telling them the county really supports this bill or doesn't support this bill, and these are the reasons why, and this is how you can change that bill to make it better for our county, that is absolutely important.
Okay.
Vicki, do you want to add anything?
No, I do think that the way we have worked this in the past with Andy and you guys is we're pretty flexible. And if there is an issue, we have to be, because everything's changing all the time. So if there's an issue that the county board really cares a lot about, we jump on it and we will do whatever, ever the majority of the board, whatever decisions you make, we are happy to support. And I don't know, as Sarah said, it doesn't necessarily need to be in your agenda for any specific item, just because, we have to be nimble and we can't always anticipate what's happening, in October, in Congress in March. So I turn it over to Andy if you have any comments.
The only thing I would add to that, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Commissioner Dozier, you're absolutely right. From time to time, there are issues that come up that either aren't articulated in FACT's policy platform or NACO's policy platform. Historically, as you know, Commissioners, at any given meeting, you can bring up an issue that arises and the board can provide any direction. We've talked about a couple of examples of those today, the Tobacco 21 issue, the May 20th Emancipation Day and the Juneteenth Emancipation Day issues at any time. And as the county administrator mentioned, if there are particular issues that the board is interested in and would like staff and our lobbying team to pay a little bit more attention to, or if the board wishes to do a resolution or a letter of support on any of those issues, we're happy to take any of that direction.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. County Administrator, did you have anything to add to that, or?
No, just as Andy said as well, it certainly wouldn't have to be done today, but if there was a particular issue, like a couple that you'd mentioned, Commissioner, just want to underscore what Andy said, that like anything else, we could bring an agenda item back to the board and propose either a strategy or something in terms of memorializing the board's support through a letter or resolution.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to come back to that, Mr. Chair, at the end, and I'll ask for additional information on a few issues so we can discuss issuing letters like that at a future meeting. So yeah, that wraps my questions for right now. Thank you both very much, and good luck in the next few weeks and in general.
Okay, I've got Commissioner Minor up next. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Commissioner Proctor, I wanted to thank you, Andy, and Nikki for all the work that you're doing and have done, as well as Jeff and Taylor on the state side, working with Andy and Nikki. Just taking a couple of successes out from last year. I mean, the 3% raise for state employees was huge for us here in Leon County. As you said, Andy, 20,000 employees here and their families benefited from that. And then by extension, we all did. So that was a big win for the people who live in Leon County, whether they're a state employee or not. And then another thing, which we haven't talked about a lot, is the $325,000 as an appropriation for the Florida African American Historical Preservation Network. That was something that this Board of County Commissioners put into its legislative agenda and were able to secure those funds, and it was not vetoed by the governor. So that a tremendous amount of credit goes to you, Andy, Nikki, Jeff, and Taylor for all of that work. And then Sarah and Vicki, just want to thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do for us in DC. I know you all had a lot to do, a lot of involvement with the CARES Act, and just keeping on top of that and making sure that that we, as well as our staff here, were in the loop with what was going on. I can't remember if it was Sarah or Vicki that said this, but you said something that really resonated with me because I've heard it before. Housing should be considered as infrastructure. Jamie Ross, who is the president and CEO of the Florida Housing Coalition, has said that often. And every time I hear that, I'm like, that's a great way of thinking about this. The more that I wish our legislature were to think about affordable housing as infrastructure. But to hear you say that, and to hear that maybe, depending on how things go on November 3rd, I'd like to see that the federal government starts thinking in more in those terms, because it is infrastructure. And the more that the federal, state, and our local communities start thinking about it in those terms, especially affordable housing as part of infrastructure, I think the better off we'll all be. So just wanted to say those few comments. Want to thank everybody on this whole team for their work last year as well as the upcoming year. And with that, Mr. Chairman, wanted to move option 1 to approve the state and federal legislative agenda.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Dozier, you're back in the queue. Yes, ma'am.
Are we finished with discussion then, Mr. Chair?
Sure, we got a motion on the floor. It would be appropriate.
I'm sorry, I was asking if we were finished with discussion. I thought we were still in discussion.
I thought you wanted to you had something else you wanted to talk about. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I appreciate the motion. I just, like I said before, there was a few things we talked about under the state discussion, particularly little tweaks to the legislative agenda that I had suggested, and I wouldn't mind seeing if the maker of the motion would be willing to include those adjustments. So I can go through that now, but I wasn't sure if we were done with other discussion. I didn't want to jump the line.
Let it rip.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So just as a reminder, the few things we talked about was bringing back a report about any type of apprenticeship or workforce programs, other funding opportunities in addition to Leon Works. Addition for Amtrak, passenger rail would be joining the Southern Rail, I lost my note now, but the Southern Rail group. Andy knows what I'm talking about. State workforce, it's adding protect our state workforce health and safety along with their pay. Those were the few items for the state. And then again, I'll wait until after this motion to ask a few questions about federal issues. So for the maker of the motion, that was a lot. I can make a substitute motion, but just thought I'd check that with you first.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier. If that is a friendly amendment that you're suggesting, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Proctor, you're the second. Are you good with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
But
so we have a
I
motion.
did want to say one thing, Mr. Chairman, before this passes.
Go ahead.
And I'm sure Commissioner Maddox possibly could appreciate this. And I just wanted to say to Sarah and Victoria, that Vicki, is very important that y'all know that as Commissioner Minor was talking about affordable housing, I'm having a victory breakfast next Wednesday. But affordable housing, I just need y'all to get me some affordable hotel spots in January around the 18th, 19th, and 20th, whatever. And that means a lot to us, some affordable hotel. And we'll talk on November the 4th, but just go ahead and, look out for a commissioner coming from a blue county. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented by Commissioner Minor, seconded by Commissioner Proctor, and amended by Commissioner Dozier, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Okay, Andy, back to you. What else, Coach?
We are all set, sir. I just had a couple dates for you. They're all included in your workshop materials. As Jeff mentioned earlier, legislative session runs early March through end of April for Florida legislative session. And again, just conference dates and the options at the end. It looks like you've tackled those.
Thanks, Andy. I see Commissioner Dozier, you've got something to add?
Oh, yes, sir. Again, this was based on the dialogue we just had about submitting letters of support for legislation that might be moving through Congress. So this would be for the December meeting. Mr. County Administrator, guide me here because I'm picking right up on what you and Andy and Sarah and Vicki just mentioned. So the two primary issues that I pulled out of the Pat Boggs report are opportunity zones, if there's any adjustments to that, and the empowerment zones, which sounds like a new concept. And secondly is the minority leaders, and I did get that right. Is that correct? The minority leader Hoyer's bill for on cannabis. So those would be the two issues that I would make a motion to bring back information on those bills. I'm sorry, three issues: opportunity, empowerment zones, and cannabis, so that we can reflect on whether or not we want to support that legislation.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
And just to provide a little feedback, Commissioner Dozier, I think it would even make it even more expedient. It sounds like from those issues that you identified that we could probably include that in the ratification of this item and bring it back to you all with some options.
Mr. Chair, Mr. County Administrator, you don't want to be chair. I know that. That would be fine, but you did say that was coming back on the 17th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. From my count, just the little tidbits that I'm hearing, we have a robust agenda for November 17th. It sounds like we have a lot of issues on that agenda potentially. I would be fine if these items came back in December if we needed more time for discussion. I'll leave that to your discretion, but that's why I'd suggested December, just thinking that you might need more time. So either is fine. Staff's direction on that, just before the end of the year.
Got it. Okay. Anything?
So did I have a second to that? I don't know if we.
Do we need a motion? Was it a direction or was it a motion? I didn't want.
It was a motion to
I
bring
didn't
back
hear.
information.
Is there a second for Commissioner Dozier's motion? Commissioner Minor,
I'm
okay.
seconding it, Mr. Chairman, because I know it's all tight and right.
It's all tight and right. Commissioner Minor beat you to the punch. Okay. Any other discussion about Commissioner Dozier's motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Administrator? Andy, you good? You got everything you need?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you all for everything. Jeff, if you're still out there somewhere, I can't see on my screen. Thank you for everything. With that, I think we are adjourned. Y'all have a great day.
Mr. Chair. Did we logged off? Okay. I know this is a workshop. You just adjourned the meeting. Are were we done? If I can't ask a question, that's fine. But I did have one more question, not legislative related. Everything's gone quiet. Okay. Meeting's over. That's just fine. The conference room, we've lost the sound.
Room's muted.
Looks like it.
To everybody else, it's fine. It was not legislative workshop. It was just a question I needed to ask in a sunshine meeting. So the chair called it, so we can let it go.
Can it wait until the next meeting, Commissioner Dozier?
Not necessarily.
I think maybe